Just saw this.
Thank you guys so much for coming out tonight. This is such a special treat. We love that, right? For all these first timers, how long has it been since you guys have, well, you've worked on it, right, Steve?
I watch it every night. No, we had a screening here. Indie Collect had a screening in December, I think it was, so we were out there. So, and then I restored it, so I had to watch it again a few times.
Yeah.
But you haven't seen it.
I haven't seen it since probably London Film Festival in '96.
Wow. It's so great to watch it with a crowd. I've seen it many times at home.
You're a good audience.
The crowd. Yeah, round of applause for Indie Collector's wonderful restoration. Steve, I gotta tell you, I grew up, I graduated high school in '95. My first job out of high school was working at a bar in South Philly as a barback. And I remember when I got the job, I was like, great, I'm gonna be working at Cheers. And it was anything but that. But when I saw this movie about a year or two later, I was like, that's it. I was like Leo DiCaprio in the meme. I was like, he nailed the bar. He nailed the bar culture. He nailed the people that live and work there. And it's just such a beautifully authentic, I think, film in terms of this type of movie. How did you get into this? What was the beginnings of Trees Lounge and how you came about? Were you a barfly and you just wanted to build a movie around that, or?
Yeah. So there really was a Trees Lounge bar in Valley Stream where I, mostly grew up. But by the time I got the money to make the movie, the bar had closed. It had been bought and was made into a sports bar, and I couldn't shoot there, so we had to put another bar. But yeah, that's when I was living in Long Island. That's what I did. I worked at a gas station. I drove an ice cream truck, and I hung out in bars like every night. And so
You were a mechanic?
I was not a mechanic. I worked at a gas station. And you had to do an oil change and change tires and pump gas. But Boone and I, we used to work a lot together in the '80s, and when I started to get film work, I wanted to write something, because we always created our own work. We always wrote and directed and performed and produced our own theater pieces. And so I wanted to write a movie that we could both be in, but I couldn't think of what to write about. And it was Boone that said, why don't you explore your Long Island days? And I thought, why? Couldn't wait to get out of there. But then when I thought about it, I thought, oh, what would I be doing if I had never left? If I never pursued acting and I never, left Valley Stream, what would I be doing? And so that was the genesis of the film, and it's because he gave me the idea.
And it stuck with you for how many years did you kind of work on the screenplay for this?
Years. It took about a good 5 years before we got the money, yeah. But I had probably started working on a screenplay even before that.
Because the screenplay to me is, boy, what a great DNA for, it feels like when you're watching the film, I feel like you think everything feels spontaneous and maybe even improv. But the more you watch the film, you realize everything is written, every scene connects to another thing, and it's such a great tapestry of characters, I think, that you build throughout the course of this. Was writing a difficult thing for you throughout? I mean, historically you're not a writer, I guess, but...
I never considered myself a writer. I learned to write with Boone because, I used to see him on stage. So Rockets Regular is in the movie, he plays Stan, and one of the bar guys. And I used to watch you and Tom Wright, another friend of ours. You guys are doing.
Well, you were in the second episode that you and Tom and I did together.
Yeah.
And then Tom and this partner, he's done a lot of work before. I never had been on stage really. And then Tom and I had like a horrible fight. And then I was thinking about this the other, because I wanted to work with Jessica. And I remember I don't remember the name of the bar, but it was on the second floor, right, somewhere. Right, I don't know, whatever. And I asked you if you wanted to do something with us. And that's in like 1982.
Yeah. And then we started working together more, and the way we used to work together was, we would think of characters in a situation, put on and have a tape recorder and tape ourselves for like a couple of hours, then painstakingly transcribe the tapes, and then write the piece from that through these improvisations. And then after a while, we just started to get to know each other so much that we could write for each other. And then that's what I did when I wrote this film. I wrote it for very specific people in mind. Rockets, my brother Michael, Elizabeth Bracco, Boone, a lot of the people that you see in the film, I wrote those pieces for.
Yeah, it's an incredible cast. I mean, top to bottom, but everything feels organic, like everybody kind of knows one another. And I feel like it's a great kind of homage in a weird way to 70s movies, because I feel like there's a lot of great actors, small character actors that sort of make a big splash, but at the same time, they just feel so lived in. Carol Kane behind the bar, I think it's...
Yeah, so Carol I did not know, and she was one that, so Sheila Jaffe and Georgette Walken cast the film. They later went on to cast The Sopranos, and they brought in Carol. Yeah. I had worked with Carol in The Soup, Alexander Rocco's film, so I did get to meet her then. Yeah.
And then the great Seymour Cassel.
Seymour Cassel, who I also worked with in The Soup, and he was such a great guy. I asked him if he would do this, feeling bad, like it's not like the biggest part, but Seymour was amazing because he loved helping out filmmakers, and especially first-time filmmakers, independent filmmakers. He was just there for, if you wanted to do it, then he was willing to help. Yeah. And we made a short film. So the first thing I did was, because I didn't know if I could do a feature, so I wrote a short film based on a piece that we had did in the theater. And Seymour was in it, and it was just the three of us. And we shot it in a bar over a weekend. And even though it was really hard, that was like the first time I thought, oh, maybe I can do this. Maybe I can,
Yeah, I was thinking about that in terms of directing, because I feel like feels like it was a 10th movie on somebody's filmography. How do you feel directing yourself? I feel like it's a role so perfectly Steve Buscemi in a lot of ways. I feel like it's kind of tailor-made for you. Did you think of it that way from the get-go, that you were going to be Tommy?
Yeah, I wrote it, because I wanted to write a part for myself and for my friends, but I wasn't planning on directing it. And then, I just realized all of my favorite directors at that time they all wrote and directed their own films. So when I would, tell people about it, they would just say, why don't you direct it? And then I thought, well, maybe then I should cast somebody else. And I thought, no, it's just easier if I do it. Yeah.
And it was easier when you got there on the set?
No, I was like,
The scene where you're climbing you know, getting away from Danny Baldwin.
Yeah, that was a good
Which
shape.
you really had to get away from Danny Baldwin.
I was really scared. I really thought he
Really,
was
you know, like one of the only people I would never want to fight. No, I'm serious. But yeah, he climbed that thing and then almost died. That was it for the day, you know, yeah.
But I was lucky to have Boone around because I remember telling you, you know, can you come even on the days you weren't working, just to like, you know, because he knows me best, you know, just to keep me honest, like, and.
Well, yeah, I
just
would
something.
drive you to work every day pretty much. I mean,
Yeah.
I remember the last scene with Lizzie.
Yeah.
I just like, this is the scene, man, this is the scene. You gotta do the scene, you gotta do it, blah, 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 blah. I mean, I was going nuts on you about that scene. And it's amazing, that scene. But what really surprised me about this today was that there's not an exaggerative moment in the movie. There's nothing that is outside of anything that those characters would do. There's nothing, and so many movies are, you know, I just feel like there's so many moments that are exaggerative, you know, that don't, you know, that really happen in everyday life. And how funny this movie is in such a tragic way is just, you know, I don't know, what a piece.
It's incredible, and yeah, you're right, every character has a little bit of tragedy and a little bit of funny. I mean, Mike, I think, is so fascinating, it's such a sort of great counterpart for Tommy, because you come to find out that he's got a lot, you know, he's got a family, he's got this business, but yet he's just as lost in a lot of ways as everybody else. And I feel like the poignancy between your two characters really kind of shifts a lot. I mean, the funniest scene, you're singing when you guys are coming home from the bar, that great song you're singing, and how you come to find out who Tommy is, and you turn on him and kick him out of the car. It's so hilarious. Did you guys?
Which is the song he just started singing that in the car, and I thought, yeah, let's roll on this.
Did you guys rehearse a lot? Was there a big rehearsal period between all the actors?
We tried to rehearse a little bit, you know, but not a lot.
Never any rehearsal. Did we have
We had rehearsal, especially the scene, you know, we did it with Chloe and Bianca. And Chloe was so nervous, like after the rehearsal, she called me and she was like almost apologizing, saying, I'm sorry, I was so terrible, I'm not good at this, and I was like, are you kidding me? You're perfect. You know, because I think sometimes during the rehearsals I try to like improvise, and not every actor is comfortable doing that, but I like doing that just to see what happens, you know, you learn more about who your character is, and sometimes you can find stuff that you can incorporate.
That was only her second movie, right?
Yeah,
She did Kids.
She did Kids, and
And
then this.
so she was
Yeah.
very raw. Well, she still is.
Did you work with so many great directors at this point? Did you bring a lot from them? Did you kind of gather, I wouldn't say, you know, wisdom throughout the years, but what did you
I
bring
mean,
from
I
them?
had worked with, I mentioned Alexander Rockwell, who I did In the Soup with. I loved working with him. Jarmusch was a big influence. But then also, you know, Lisa Rinsler, who shot the film, we would watch a lot of films. I loved Cassavetes. So even though this wasn't, I don't think anybody could ever do what Cassavetes did, but I loved the spirit of his movies. And another big influence was the John Huston film, Fat City, which has great bar scenes. And, you know, I kind of ripped off the ending of that movie because Jeff Bridges and Stacy Keach are in, they're not in a bar, but they're in like some rundown diner, and they're just sitting at the counter having a cup of coffee. There's very little dialogue, but the movie ends on just them, just sitting there. And I thought, okay, I'll do that too. But you know what's funny is that at the end scene where I'm, sitting alone at the bar, it's so hard to get the money for this film because people thought the ending was such a downer and that it was not hopeful. And so I was sort of forced to write this false ending where my character leaves the bar. So right at where I ended the movie, if you go on another like 2 seconds, I actually get up and leave the bar. And then I had written a scene where my character goes out and works on his car. Like, that was the hopeful thing. We never shot that scene. Fixing the car. I kept saying, no, we'll get it. And we never got it. But then, like the executives at Live Entertainment who financed the movie, they said, at least leave the bar. And so I had a version where I leave the bar, and we did test screenings, and some people were like, where did you go? Yeah, I'm not going anywhere. I gotta stay at the bar. To me, that was, just the fact that I'm not drinking the shot of wild turkey was enough. That to me was a hopeful ending. It was the first time he's sitting at the bar and being aware of like, oh, maybe something is going on with me that I should think about.
But you're sitting in Bill's
I'm
seat.
sitting, yeah, of course, it was so obvious. Like,
Yeah, exactly.
If I don't change my ways, I'm gonna end up like the guy before me.
And there's a lot of like alcoholics patterns throughout the movie. That to me is one of them where Uncle Al in a weird way is a good precursor to where Tommy could end up. In much the same way that with Mike, he's talking to his daughter, who basically says, don't talk to me now, you can't tell me to shut up, and then that repeats itself, a scene later. I found that really kind of poignant and sad in a lot of ways. How was this movie received when it came out? You had a big year that year with Fargo at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, the company that released it, they didn't put a lot of money into advertising, and it was out for, I don't know.
Well, I mean, but they released it in a lot of theaters.
They did?
I believe they did.
I just remember
But
calling them a lot saying, can you just put a fucking ad in And they said, well, we have one like on Fridays. That's when people look to go to the movies. I go, really? I go, I just go to the movies. I look in the paper and I see what's playing any day of the week. So I mean, I guess it was received okay, but I guess not a lot of people saw it. There's a lot of first timers here. Oh yeah, they weren't even born yet. Thank you, really, thank you for coming.
Do you guys, is there any questions in the crowd for these guys? Yeah, right here.
I feel like you have a pretty killer list of movies that you've done and TV shows your whole life. Is there one thing that you're the most proud of?
Is there a show or movie that Steve is most proud
Yeah.
of that he's worked on?
I don't know. There's a lot. I don't know if there's one thing that I'm most proud of. I'm pretty proud of this, I'm just happy to be working as much as I do and in like various genres, and I'm just happy to be working.
Steve, you directed a few great movies throughout the years. One of my favorites you did about 5 or 6 years ago called Interview. It's a wonderful film.
It was 15 years ago.
Time flies. Animal Factory was great. Yeah, fantastic film. Steve, these out. Steve's got a great filmography. Anybody else out here got a question? Yes, right back there. Yeah. Yep.
Was the casting process really rigorous for this film? Because it's really so superb, all the actors
I mean, no, like I said, I wrote it for a lot of my friends, so that was easy, but there were a few parts that were, that were, like Danny Baldwin was a total surprise. I had offered that to a couple of other actors before that, and, you know.
Kevin Corrigan.
Didn't want to do, oh, Kevin Corrigan.
Oh, he's so good.
Yeah, I loved working with him. No, I really had, it was really nice to have Sheila and Georgianne, because they just really were tuned in to New York actors at the time. And, yeah, no, it wasn't that hard.
Whoever picked those kids, brilliant.
The kids were great.
They were awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, poor little boy, it's drew me by.
And the girl who won't buy that, and won't buy the ice cream, that, you know, that,
Io, yeah.
I know, Io, she's the only girl at that time, only child in the East Village. I mean, it's kind of true, it's like in a whole group of, you know, a huge group of people, she was the only child. She was so great. She's great now, I think.
Yeah, no,
They all saw the Uncle Al
Probably
song.
40 years old.
the Uncle Al song, Seymour made that up, of course.
Incredible. What we got? Yes, right back there. Yeah, you.
In the process of restoring it, obviously watching it again, so far removed from the time of making it, are there any things that like stuck in your craw, like looking at it with like remove of like, oh, if I could have done this differently, or oh, that shot didn't come together exactly how I wanted. The benefit of hindsight, I'm most curious.
I don't know, I mean, it's, no, there's nothing really that, you know, I mean, it was, we made it, and I'm, you know, happy that we made it, and seeing it again, it's like somebody else made it. And, but there's nothing in it that I don't think that I would change or wish that I could go back and do. I'm just very happy that, you know, some of the movie was made in the editing room. Kate Williams, who edited the film, she was amazing to work with. And, you know, when I remember when I seen the first cut of this, like I was so depressed. I thought, oh my God, I spent 5 or 6 years of my life, and it's not what I wanted. And if there are any, you know, first-time filmmakers out there, or any aspiring filmmakers, don't get discouraged. That's just the process. You know, you see something that you made, and you see like the first assembly, and it's rough. And we really discovered a lot of things in the editing. The whole opening scene of us two in the bar, that was a later scene. That was part of a much longer scene that was almost cut from the movie because it was too long, like to be in the middle of the film. And we discovered that in the editing. Like I was just gonna cut the film, and it was actually the assistant editor who said, well, why don't you put that in the beginning? And I thought, thank you. It was a perfect introduction to our characters. And so there's a lot that you can discover, you know, like in the editing room. You could almost rewrite a film.
And the music in this movie.
Yeah, Evan Laurie did the score, and all the, you know, the ink spots we hear mostly in that was another huge inspiration for, like, you know, thinking of the tone of the film. I had bought this like little cassette tape at a flea market of the ink spots, and hearing those songs just really evoked that whole kind of, you know, mood of like what this bar was.
Talk a little bit about how difficult it was starring and directing. Were there any advantages to doing both?
What are the advantages and disadvantages of starring in your own movie that you're directing?
I mean, the advantage was that I didn't have to explain to another actor like what I wanted. But it was, Yeah, it was nerve-wracking. I mean, I get so anxious when I direct, and especially on this one, like the first time. But I was lucky to have Boone there just to sort of be watching, you know. Lisa Rinsler, the DP, was so helpful. And I just found when I was in a scene with anybody, if I stayed in character in the scene, then I knew everything was kind of all okay. If I was kind of out of it, then I thought there's something going on that's, you know, and then I would talk to the other actor about it and think. And, I mean, it was hard, but God, it was 30 years ago. I don't remember.
You know, you were in almost every scene.
Yeah.
And so there was this, and it was, Lisa had not done that many movies, I don't think, and so, and she was slow and good, but she was slow.
Yeah.
And that, you know, and there was this process, and then I would try and, you know, because you didn't really want to spend your whole time telling her what to do, and then I would say things to her, and she was looking at me like, who the fuck are you? Who? And you never really said, well, kind of through it, eventually you went like, okay, Boone is, you know, we've been working together for 8 years, and, you know, maybe, you know, he's just looking out for this.
You also knew so much more about film than I did, and, you know, I mean, I was, like, I didn't know anything, really. That's why when I look at this, I'm just, like, amazed that we made it.
And that it's so good.
Well, thank you, but I'm glad that you enjoyed it.
No, I really think it's a really good movie.
We got time for one more. Here, let me get this side. Anybody? Yes, right back there. Yeah, you.
Hi, thanks so much for being here, guys. I appreciate the look behind the writing process, talking about like transcribing and having it be like an open, free-flowing conversation. Was there something that you found worked especially well? The naturalism comes off, but in editing and going back, can you just go a little bit deeper on editing back on that transcription stuff and how you pieced that together?
I mean, the way that this film was not, you know, this was written, but the way that we used to work before that was, you know, we would improvise and transcribe and then kind of pick out.
Well,
the
often,
pieces.
like, things would start by listening to somebody who was in a booth in a restaurant. We did that a lot. And that would be like the germ that started the whole thing. And we never did anything that we didn't have a date to perform.
We would get the gig first. Yeah, we would,
Write
you
the
know,
thing.
and then we'd have like a week to like write something, and we did a whole like 3 months at this
Oh,
place.
longer than that.
Longer than that,
Yeah.
at this
Long.
place, Oak City, which was primarily a music club. But they had a theater night, and we did like a show there like each week.
For like 15 weeks, and by the 13th week, we were really ready to kill each other.
And then Marcus Regulaire, who played Stan in the film, he used to have, his real name is Michael Mora. He was a comedian. He's in a lot of Jim Jarmusch films, and he used to have a cabaret show at midnight called Rockets Regulaire's
Taxi Cab, but that was before, that was the first thing.
Yeah, and we used to perform it. So we would be performing in his pieces, we would be doing our own pieces, and we were both performing in John Jezerin's, another playwright friend of ours. We were always working, and we also had full-time jobs. And it was the best time to be in New York City during the 80s in the East Village. It was an incredible time.
Well, gentlemen, Mark, thank you especially for being here, speaking.
Thank you, everybody.